Hi, hello everyone. It's Jennifer McCollum and Casey O'Rourke. If you haven't met Casey yet, oh my gosh, we are in for just a joy today to meet her. And funny enough, her business is called Joyful Courage. So Casey, I'm going to let her tell you about herself, but because I could go on for hours. She is so amazing. She is a huge supporter of our Parent Teen site, and you can find her on our website. She hosted, how I found her is she hosted a summit for parents of teenagers, and I listened to every one of those audio recordings, like every day I listen to them, and they just help so much. So Casey is a positive discipline trainer. She's also the host of Joyful Courage. It's a podcast, and if you haven't listened to her podcast, you're really going to want to. She does interviews and she does them solo, and they're just jam-packed full of amazing goodness for parents of teens. And I know I missed a lot describing Casey, but Casey, say hi to everybody and tell us about yourself and and your book. We're going to talk about her book today.
Yes.
But hi, Casey, and welcome. Tell us about yourself, everything I missed.
Hi, Jennifer. Thank you so much for having me. I so appreciate it. So, like you mentioned, I'm a positive discipline trainer and coach. I've been facilitating positive discipline since 2007. I found it when my kids were 1 and 4, and they are now 13 and 16, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And like you mentioned, this last winter, I did a audio summit focused on parenting teens with positive discipline. I found, especially the last couple of years, as my kids have entered the teen years, I'm looking for resources, right? Because positive discipline is all about being kind and firm at the same time, which for whatever reason, when they're school age, and younger, it just feels more accessible. And then they become teenagers and it feels like the stakes are higher. You know that they're individuating, you know that they're going to experiment with things, but the idea of kindness and firmness inside of that felt very elusive. And I couldn't really find resources that weren't, it seemed like everything out there was, oh, just do it like this and everybody will be fine. Or it was the opposite, which was, everybody's going to rehab. So I couldn't find anything that was really articulating the messy middle. And that's where I felt like I was. I felt like I was in the messy middle and I had no model. I had no resources. And so I put together the summit and I reached out to colleagues of mine in the positive discipline community, lead trainers and trainers. And the criteria was, you have to be parenting a teenager, or you have to have already parented a teenager, and it had to have been challenging for you. I did not want to have conversations with people who said, oh, I just did this and it was just magical. Like, I am not interested in that conversation. I want to know about when boundaries are being pushed, when things, when worry and fear show up, how do we embody this style that we've committed ourselves to, that can feel like, sometimes just feels like not enough. I think our traditional mindset shows up and it's like, I got to do something here, and anyway, so that was beautiful. And that kind of sealed the deal that the parents of teenagers are really where I want to focus. Even as I have clients with school age kids and younger, what really is lighting me up right now is working with parents of teenagers and really seeing them and hearing them. And the book that I wrote, Joyful Courage, Calming the Drama and Taking Control of Your Parenting Journey, is really, I wrote it during my daughter's freshman year, which was last year. And it's really about our journey, the parent journey of finding our center and our grounding as everything around us feels like it's spiraling and spinning and out of control. And the really neat thing about the feedback I'm getting is that parents who've read it are commenting on, this is so helpful. My kids are 3 and 5. This is so helpful. My kids are in their teen years. Debbie Reber from Tilt Parenting mentioned, and she's all about differently wired kids, and mentioned how useful this was for her. So it really isn't about, the book itself isn't about like, oh, this is for when your kids are this age or this age, or this is your family system. It's really, doesn't matter. It's about your experience inside of this wild ride of parenting. And that's really where I get excited to support parents, because yes, I have tools and strategies for parenting, but ultimately, if we aren't connected here, if we aren't really engaged and committed in the growth and the learning that is being presented and offered to us, there's this like, we're continuously bumping up against suffering basically and frustration. So yeah, I'm really excited about the things that I'm doing right now.
And I think that is what completely drew me to you as a parent of 4 teenagers. Well, our oldest is 20 now, but it's still I consider
Still a developing brain.
they're all amazing, but having a teenager is not easy. And I found that once I started to get a handle on myself and my emotions and what's going on inside me, things got better with them. So I think that's exactly what drew me to you and to your book. So tell us now, your book, it breaks it down. I love the analogy. You describe it as an emotional freight train. And I get it, totally get it. And I think everyone with parents listening to this is going to totally get it too. So you break it down in three categories. So number one is that you've identified that you found yourself on this emotional freight train. The second part of the book is how to get off the emotional freight train. And I love the tools and strategies that you give, because that's the way I work best, is that give me something that's going to help me and also make me realize that how much my emotions affect my entire family, what's going on with me. And then the third part of your book is staying off the emotional freight train. So Casey, can you just tell us a little bit about each of those 3 sections of your book, and then maybe share a tool or a strategy with us that can really help us parents that are finding that we've got teenagers and we need to get a handle on, stop that freight train or get off it.
Or, hey, I'm on it right now. I think that even, that's a really important thing to me, is for parents to hear the message that this is not about being perfect. This is not about never falling apart. This is about growing in our awareness of what's happening while it's happening. I think that is really our life's work, is to be really present to what's happening while it's happening. And so, the first section about recognizing that we all ride the emotional freight train. And the emotional freight train analogy actually came from a conversation that I had with my son years ago. And he, because he would just flip out, he would get so upset for a variety of reasons. And it was just like this, he would just be taken away. And I was like grasping for language to support him in this experience that he was having. And I said, it's like the train, it comes rumbling up and you hop on, and then the train is in charge and the train is taking you down the tracks and you're just kind of hanging on. And I realized that was a really good metaphor for parents, myself included. Right. And so we started to use that language as a tool for communicating where we were. Right. Like, oh, even he would say, well, Mom, I think you're on the train, and then I got to find my grace and say, yeah, you're right. Instead of,
I love it when the kids point that out.
Yes. When we ask for it, we have to be gracious enough to accept it. So the first part of the book is really starting to identify your emotional freight train and recognize that like I said, we all ride it, right? And I think that once we start to realize that, we start to feel empowered. And it's not just like, oh, I ride the emotional freight train, but really paying attention to how does it feel like when you're really in it, when you're flipped, when you've just said, screw it. I'm going to let them know how I feel. Starting to pay attention to what does your body feel like? What is the emotion that shows up for you? What are the stories that you're telling yourself? And just really getting intimately familiar with this experience. That's like so important. And so when parents start to identify that and start to pay more attention to that, what can happen is we can start to feel it coming on. Like a lot of parents that I work with, when we first start working together, they'll say, well, my kid does this and I'm just there, right? There's no pause, there's no buildup. But once we start to be really intentional about paying attention to what's happening for us and looking for patterns, then we find that there is a pause. We do have the ability to drop into ourselves in a way that allows us ever more choice, right? And sometimes we're going to choose, no, I'm mad. I'm going to let them know that I'm mad. Sometimes we're going to choose that. But what the idea is to increase the opportunity to choose something different, right? To choose to take care of ourselves. So that's the first part of the book. The second part of the book, I talk about things like, we all, if you start talking to your friends about the things that really get to you about your kids, what you'll find is that not everybody has the same triggers, right? Like some people are really triggered by back talk while other parents are like, I let it roll off my back. Some parents are really triggered about lack of contribution. Other parents, that's not really the thing that gets me the most. And when we start to dig into that, we find all sorts of really interesting connections to how we were raised, right? And what kinds of things showed up for us in our childhood that shook our feelings of safety or influence. So that's part of our baggage that we carry on the train. And it's just bringing awareness to that. There's so much power in simple awareness. Recognizing too that the mental state of our kids and our partners, that's going to affect us. I mean, even out in the world, when you get cut off or somebody flips you off from another car, that experience, we can really feel that experience. So we take on a lot of other people's energy as well. And again, it's being aware of that. And then the tool that I really appreciate that I've created for parents is a mindfulness tool. And the idea is that when we can connect more with we start with our breath, because sometimes when we're in the spin out of why we need to tell everybody why they're wrong or bad or whatever, we are really attached to that. And so sometimes I'm sure people that are watching have had the experience of, I can't talk myself out of it. Like I'm trying, I know I'm supposed to be centered, but I can't talk myself out of it. So let's bypass the conversation and drop right into the body, starting with just simply breathing. And something that I learned was when we inhale, it actually increases our heart rate. And when we exhale, it decreases our heart rate. So, the simple math is, when we can breathe in a way that where our exhales are longer than our inhales, we're actually telling the nervous system to calm down. So we breathe, right? We are intentionally breathing. And then we move from breath into, okay, now I'm going to enter my body. I'm going to find those places of tension in my body, and I'm going to just lovingly release them, right? Whatever that looks like for you. If it's a body scan, but you start to notice like where is there heat? Where is there rigidity? And what happens when I let that go? And once we've created a more neutral body, then we can engage in what I call the balcony seat, which is really this energetic lifting up and out of our experience so that we have a broader perspective. And I go into this in more detail in the book, but really it's remembering that our kids are not being a problem, they're having a problem, that there's belief and all sorts of things going on underneath the behavior. And if we focus there, we're going to get a lot further than just tip of the iceberg focus. We also, from this place, recognize like I need to take some time for myself here. I cannot engage in this right now. So the balcony seat is really about discovering and expanding our observer of self. And then the third part of the book is about sustainability. And I love this part of the book because what's really important to me for parents to hear is this tool, this breath body balcony tool, will not be useful if you only try to use it when you're triggered, right? That would be like, the symphony going to their performance and not having practiced, or an Olympic runner showing up to the Olympics having not trained. So when we're triggered, when the challenges show up, that's our Olympic race. That's our symphony. That's when we want to tap into something that's become so familiar to us that we don't need to think so hard about it. And the only way we can do that is if we practice. So in the third part of the book, I really offer parents a whole menu of ways to bring this mindfulness practice into their everyday life so that it becomes familiar, so that it's not such a big reach when we're triggered or having a hard time or noticing what's happening for us. It becomes something that's right there, like, oh yeah, I have this practice and I know what I'm supposed to do. Let me try that out, right? So, and I talk about meditating and journaling and movement and, just ways to take care of our soul, to take care of ourselves so that we can be who we want to be for our family and ourselves.
And I love, Casey, when you mentioned about that balcony view, that I find for myself, I take everything so personally. When a behavior is happening, I love, first of all, that you say the behavior is never really what's going on, right? Something behind the behavior. But if you can identify that I'm taking this personally and this is my reaction to it, and then kick in with that tool that you've been practicing that you're ready to implement, can you give us, I just found so many great tools within your book, but can you give us parents one tool, one thing we can do? I know things that work for me, but what's been the most successful for you in your coaching business with other parents? What's been a really successful tool to use to start training ourselves and our emotions?
Well, so we all have these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we love them and we hate them. And because we have them, and most of us have them close by at all times, it's not just the teenagers. There's all sorts of things in technology that we can use. One of the things that I invite clients to do is to set reminders throughout the day. Just little reminders that are going to ping throughout the day. And when they hear it, they know, okay, I'm going to find my feet. That's something I talk about in the book, because our feet are always in the present moment, right? So where are my feet? Okay. And then that's kind of the beginning of, I'm going to be intentional with my breath. I'm going to notice what's happening with my body. I'm going to take a balcony seat. Even if we're not doing anything, like my alarm went off recently and I was like, okay, I get to practice what I preach. And I just went through the process and I realized that I have been thirsty for probably a half an hour. And it was like, okay, it's time for me to get up and actually refill this glass of water, which sounds so silly, except for how many of us could drink more water in the day? There's these little things that we know we need to do better, but then we are caught up in whatever is in front of us and we skip it, right? So that was just one little, that's one little way that I use the phone alarms. The other thing that I invite people into is Post-it notes. Where can you give yourself a little message so that you'll see it? And when you see it, it still requires personal responsibility, because we can ignore the reminders, we can ignore the Post-it notes, but that's on you, right? So some parents too, I know, use this practice. It's like every time I'm about to open my car door, I just take a moment and I do breath, body, balcony, just to be in the practice of learning to put it right there at your fingertips. I am a meditator. I love meditation, and I try to do it every day for anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes. And that practice for me is about noticing when I'm thinking and coming back to breath. And that muscle, like it's not, and I talk about this in the book, a good friend of mine, I said, gosh, I really want to meditate, but man, it's so hard for me to sit there with nothing in my mind, right? She said, that is not what it's about. It's really about catching ourselves once we're running through story, scenario, planning, and realizing like, oh, I'm thinking right now, I'm going to come back to breath. And we like, it's like a workout for that mindfulness muscle, so that then applicable with our kids is, oh, I'm taking this totally personally right now. And this is not about me. I'm going to come back to my breath. I'm going to come back to my center so that I can be available to my child and not caught up in how dare they, right? I also have a 16-year-old daughter who's really good at letting me know when I'm making it about me. So
yes, yep, they're good, good at that.
yeah.
I love the way you teach, Casey, and I'm so excited that I can share you with our community, because you have such a way of teaching in just a you're to the point. You give really positive, constructive feedback on how you can do better, but you're real. And I love that. You really, because we are probably all more similar than we are different, right? Like
sure.
if we have teenagers, and if you know someone with a teenager, you need to reach out and introduce them to Casey, because you are so real about just what we're all going through, and that we should stop feeling that shame and the overwhelm and everything else. So I highly recommend that you get Casey's book. We're going to have a link on our website where you can get it. It is in paperback format. It is in audio format.
Coming soon in audio.
Coming soon. And it is, I just highly recommend it. Now, and one thing we didn't really touch on, but I want you to come to our site and find out about Casey's coaching. Now, how often do you run your coaching program?
Well,
Your group.
Yeah, so I work one-on-one with clients all the time. And what I've created, and I'm just coming into the second round in May, is a 4-week program for parents of teens. And it's coaching, and it's content, and it's community. Okay. I just ran the beta version of it in March, and the feedback was phenomenal. The May group is closed for now, and I'm planning on bringing it back in the fall. And then my goal would be to do 2 or 3 sessions in the first half of 2020. That is right? Is that next year?
Yeah, it is. I know, hard to believe.
Oh my God.
So you're coaching that kind of group program you have, but you do have one-on-one, so parents can reach out one-on-one with you. Grab your book. I'd highly recommend they grab your book.
Yep.
Is there anything we missed, Casey? Because I just, you are going to be, I think, a godsend to many people with teens. So if I missed anything, I apologize. Maybe you'll come back and we can talk about, some more specifics. The podcast. Definitely listen to
the podcast. Listen to the podcast. Yeah. Just listen to the podcast. It's a good one.
I always have
I talk a lot. I'm very authentic and transparent. I talk about my own stuff that's going on. And I have amazing guests who inspire me. Join me on the podcast. The book is pre-sale right now. And with the pre-sale, that means that if you buy before May 20th, you will get a PDF companion guide that's kind of journaly, that will support you in really taking what you're reading and applying it directly into what's happening for you and your family.
Great. I love journals, that if you can journal along with it. So that is wonderful. Thank you so much, Casey. I know you have to get going to your next coaching. So thank you for spending time with us. And you can find Casey on our Parent Teens website, and just reach out to her, because you will be thankful for sure. Getting off that emotional freight train.
That's right. Get off.
Yeah, get
or
off.
At least know.
Right. Well, thank you
Thank
very much, Casey. Take care. Goodbye.